Good afternoon. We're going to start the Children, Seniors, and Families Committee meeting for September 28th. And I'm going to first ask if we can call the roll to
Vice
establish
Chairperson Arenas
Here.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
We'll now move to public comment, and this is an opportunity to speak to any item within the purview of this committee that is not on the agenda. Do we have any public speakers?
All right, we don't have one in person, but we do have one speaker on Zoom.
Great. Please invite the speaker to participate.
All right. So our speaker is Stephen Harris. Stephen, we are unmuting you. You will have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking. Stephen, we have given you permission to talk. Please just unmute your microphone.
There we go. I'm unmuted. I'm Stephen Harris. I'm a pediatrician at the county, Santa Clara Valley Medical Center for 31 years. And I just wanted to bring something not particularly urgent, but interesting to your attention that I've been trying to get an answer to. I wrote some folks at the county already about this. It's about states taking Social Security benefit payments made to qualifying children who are in foster care and using these funds for the cost of the foster care. Apparently, some states or municipalities even apply for Social Security on behalf of the child who's not even made aware that she's receiving Social Security benefits. My quick research on this is that it's not an illegal practice, but that the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Social Security Administration issued a letter on August 17th, 2023, encouraging states to stop using foster care youth Social Security funds for foster care and support. And I'm just wondering about Santa Clara County's policy and practice on this, whether Santa Clara County Social Services applies for Social Security on behalf of foster care youth. If they do they take any money that the child qualifies for and put it into the general fund to use for general foster care support, or do they put it in the child's own account? My hope would be that we're using the money for the child, but that it's for the child's future and not really for paying for the child's foster care, which is, the state or local government's responsibility. But really, I'm just curious what our policy and practice is and what people's thoughts are about this, if any.
Are there any other public speakers?
There are no other requests to speak.
I'm going to close the public hearing, and I will ask, if staff does not know the answer to that now, if we could get the response to that question both sent to Dr. Harris and to the board.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. We can send it off agenda. I think there's a some state guidelines on that, so we can send that out.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to move on then to item 3, which is to approve the consent calendar and changes to the agenda. On our consent calendar, we have items 16, 17, 18, 19. Item 20 are the minutes from June 22nd. We're going to hold those to the next meeting, and I'm going to request that we hold item 9, and this is the trans recruitment and retention efforts, to our next meeting. Do you want to add or change anything?
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure what you would think, Chair. There's a couple of items on our agenda that may be on our consent, but I'm completely open to hearing them as well. And I was thinking about 6, 10, and 11, but I'm also willing to hear those as well.
So let me just look real quick. Item 6, 10, and 11. Item 6 is our joint foster youth report out. I do think I would, if it's okay, like to keep that on, but
Sure.
I think item 10, let me just look real quick. I think item 10 we can leave on consent, and I'll just make some comments from the dais. And item 11 on CDA, I think we will, if it's okay, I'd like to leave it on for a quick report, and let me just look at the staff real quick. And do we have any speakers on CDA? Yeah, we do. Okay, so we'll leave CDA on. All right. So thank you for that. Let me go to item 10, and this is the VASC. On this item, I just wanted to say, I don't know where the staff is. Ah, there you go. There you are. I'm so sorry. You have to look at Liam. There you go. Okay, I can see you back there. So first of all, I just want to say I'm really excited that we have a system for community organizations and county departments and our partner agencies and community groups to be able to access a VASC. That was a big request when we were building that center out. What I would like to get an off-agenda report is to know what the limits are in terms of how many times a week, a month, or a quarter that entities are able to make reservations. And really what I want to do is make the reservation policy transparent to the board, so if that can be sent out. And then how that's quantified, if it's joint or not joint. Like, we're just getting a lot of those questions from the community. And then the plan for opening the third floor is really clear, and in November and December, the VASC staff will be providing key stakeholders information about and a preview of the completed third floor and the planned programming, which I'm very excited about. And I'd like to make sure that we have a community, that we do the programming and we understand the planned programming before the community unveiling. Again, I want transparency, I want it to be smooth. And I understand the event will be in February during the Lunar New Year celebration, which I think the timing of that is great. I would like to request that we do a soft launch through the exec's office in January, so that community organizations can experience that floor. And what I'd love, so they can just see it and table and know how to use it. And that way we can do a little practice on the reservations also, so that we understand that it works before we launch it. Does that make sense to everyone, what I've said just so far?
It does make sense, and I am aware of, in general, but not the details, that there are some activities planned to apprise the community of the opening of that second floor, make sure it's going to be really fully utilized as a wonderful community space, third floor as envisioned, and we'll be happy to share more details with you and the rest of the board on exactly what's planned and get any input you may have.
And that would be great. And if at our next meeting next month, we can just have all that laid out, including the requests I made relative to access, so that, one, we understand the reservation system for the entire building, we understand what's going to happen on the third floor, and that that as much as possible on the ground floor, we just understand the programming out for at least the next 6 months, and along with the partner organizations that are using the building. Really, the reason I'm interested in this is when we start to get questions about access and who has access, that my alarm bells go off, and I want to make sure that people all feel like that is their center, it's clear, it's transparent, and that it's active, like that they know the space is going to be activated. So calendar, the policy, the soft launch for the third floor, and then just a real complete, robust list of access relative to the multipurpose room as well.
Just a quick question, Supervisor. I thought I heard you say you wanted an off agenda, but then I also thought I heard you say you were interested in having this come back at next CSFC, so just wanted clarification on whether you want.
What I wanted on the off agenda was the policy that we're using, the transparency policy in terms of how
Who can
people
reserve.
can reserve it, so that when people call us, every office can just send it out. But I do want to report back on the overall activities and the soft launch and all of that in November, so that we're able to be ready in January.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And that would be part of my motion. Liam, thank the whole team. Like, people are so still excited about that place. It's amazing, so thank you. And that would be my only addition.
Great, thank you. So that motion is for consent calendar. including items 16 through 20, as well as items 6, 9, and 10, and the direction that you indicated for soft launch for the third floor, practicing the reservation policy and having that be transparent before January or by January.
Perfect. And the only change I would add is that item 20, which is the minutes, will hold till the next meeting.
Great, and hold item 20 for next
Yeah.
meeting.
Thank you. So with that, do we have any comments on that
Oh,
action?
excuse me, I'm sorry. And let me clarify, and hold item 9
Correct. So
as
item
well.
9, yes, thank you. Thanks for catching that. So we'll be holding item 9 to the next meeting, item 20 the next meeting, with the report out on item 10 at the next meeting. And we're going to move item 10, 16, 17, 18, and 19 will be the action. Was that clear as mud?
So item 6 will remain on the regular agenda?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so that's a motion by Chavez with a second by Arenas. Are we ready? There are currently no requests to speak at this particular time.
We'll close the public hearing and move right to
Okay,
vote.
so Vice Chairperson Arenas
Yes.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes.
Excellent, thank you. We're going to move then to item 4, and this is School Link Services. And
Good afternoon, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Arenas. I'm Zelia Faria-Costa, the Director of the Children's Services for the Behavioral Health Services Department, and I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll have a short presentation for you, and then we'll be able to answer any questions you might have.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Chavez and Vice Chairperson Arenas. I'm Catherine Spears, the Division Director for School-Based Behavioral Health Programs.
your mic isn't on.
Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Gutierrez, and I'm the Division Manager for School Link Services. Happy to be here.
Welcome, Sonia.
So today we'll provide an update for the fiscal year 23 programs, updates, and project updates. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Just to ground our discussion today, we put here the presentation of the Schooling Services multi-tier system of supports, identifying the tiers of services. Tier 1 being family engagement and prevention, and these are universal supports that are provided to all students and family members. We have mental health screening, psychoeducation, outreach, school classroom-wide skill streaming, family engagement, and touch and refer case management. These are usually provided by the SLS coordinator, as well as family specialists, behavior specialists, and paraprofessionals. We have Tier 2 services with early intervention, and this is more so for targeted supplemental supports for students who may be at risk. And this includes activities such as skill groups, parenting workshops, case management and navigation, and behavior support services in the classroom. These services are provided by paraprofessionals like a family partner or a family specialist, someone who may have lived experience. And then our Tier 3 service is Schooling Services Behavioral Health, and this is for our individual supports and services. We provide individual, group, and family therapy, targeted case management, medication support, and crisis intervention. And services are provided by clinical direct service staff, which are usually licensed or associates. Next slide, please. To highlight some of our work in FY23 for our Tier 1 Family Engagement Program, as well as our Prevention and Early Intervention Program, our Tier 1 services are really to support all students and serve mass number of students and families. So our family engagement events that are organized and facilitated by the SLS coordinator had over 63,000 students and families attend these events. Over 13,000, almost 14,000 parents and students also attended workshop series of family engagement activities. The SLS coordinator serves over 6,600 students, and our PEI prevention program, which is really the mental health promotion, outreach, skill streaming, and psychoeducation, over 25,800 students and families were served. Just to highlight from FY23, of the 6,634 students served by the SLS coordinators, they resulted in referrals for over 8,000 referrals to behavioral health services, community resources. And of those 8,260 referrals, 80% of them were closed because they were successfully linked to services. What we've seen from FY22 to FY23, we saw an increase by 48% of student and family participation in the family engagement activities and events and workshop series. Next slide, please. To highlight some of our Tier 2 services, which is early intervention, and our Tier 3 services of schooling services behavioral health, we saw a number of students served. I'll start from the bottom. The prevention and early intervention, which includes parenting workshops, behavior support services. Over 3,000 students and parents and families were served. The PI program does provide some individualized therapy, more on the mild to moderate side, and they served over 900 students. The schooling services behavioral health, which is our specialty mental health services, serving the Medi-Cal population and uninsured students, served over 587 students. Some of the highlights that we saw in FY23 is that 83% of these students were discharged successfully, meeting their treatment goals. And then students also showed improvement in areas of the behavioral and emotional domain, life functioning domain, and risk behaviors based on the CANS, the Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Questionnaire. Next slide, please. Additional highlights that I want to share is that we provide caregiver surveys via email, text, as well as through phone to get information from parents about the services that they received and the experience they had with schooling services. 89% of the caregivers expressed that they stated that they received the tools they needed to help improve their child's needs and well-being. 88% felt belonging. Caregivers felt more comfortable and welcomed at their child's school after receiving SLS family engagement services. 90% of caregivers received tools to help them improve their child's academic success. In addition to surveying the caregivers, we also survey teachers. Skill streaming is provided in a classroom, and so 80% of the teachers indicated that they were satisfied with the skill streaming sessions. 78% of the teachers found that the skill streaming sessions help in meeting the classroom needs. Students also shared responses about satisfaction from the skill streaming experience. They shared, "I learned how to control my anger, and self-control is the key to health, wellness, and success." Schooling services family engagement program primarily served elementary students, about 39%, followed by middle school students at 30%. Next slide, please. Some of the progress updates for our school-based behavioral health wellness centers. We have three categories. The Mental Health Student Services Act, which is 6 wellness centers that are facilitated by County Office of Ed and in partnership with Behavioral Health. And then the School Student Behavioral Health Incentive Program, which also has 6 additional wellness centers. All of these wellness centers are fully operating and are seeing students since the beginning of the school year. The updates, the County Wellness Center Grant Program, which is funded through the ARPA dollars and Mental Health Services Act, additional $2 million was added from probation, and a total of $12 million for school-based behavioral health wellness centers. And we are, at the time of writing this report, there was 18 letters of interest that were submitted by the school districts. And the Wellness Center Grant Program goals is to create new wellness centers, enhance existing wellness centers, and fund infrastructural needs for wellness centers. Since writing the report, on September 13th, the Valley Health Foundation announced and made live the Notice of Financial Availability for the Wellness Center Grant Program. Outreach was done to all Santa Clara County school districts and County Office of Ed, informing them of the Notice of Financial Availability. And on September 20th, the Valley Health Foundation hosted the Bidders Conference, in which 22 school districts attended. All school districts also received the recording of the Bidders Conference, and Valley Health Foundation will be posting the document of frequently asked questions on or before October 9th. Applications for the NOFA will be due on October 20th, and soon after we'll look at awards and grants. Next slide, please. So just looking ahead for FY24, the Schooling Services Division will continue to outreach to school districts to implement the Schooling Services Family Engagement Program and the coordinator position. We have made great progress with Evergreen Elementary School District, where signatures are en route for a service agreement. We are in the process of also coordinating a service agreement with Berryessa School District and still continuously outreaching to the remaining school districts. We will also look at expanding the positive parenting program. So it's PPP level 2 and 3 is now available for school districts. We'll incorporate behavioral health screening for third graders, and we'll increase skill groups availability to improve emotional well-being. We'll expand Schooling Services behavioral health program to include intensive services. So that will include paraprofessionals providing support to the clinicians. And this will also provide and expand supports to newly identified high-risk zip codes. Those high-risk zip codes include 95125, 95119, and 95002, in which we'll look at exploring and assessing their needs for behavioral health services. The support that we are looking at for the Children, Youth, and Behavioral Health Initiative, we have been working and engaging with the County Office of Ed and the managed care plans to implement the Student Behavioral Health Incentive Program, and the strategies include the workforce expansion, informational technology enhancement, building stronger partnerships, and the wellness centers. As more information comes out for the school services fee schedule, we'll work with promoting the fee schedule to help sustain the wellness centers and other school-based services that can be reimbursed through the fee schedule. And this is an opportunity for school districts and managed care plans to provide sustainable funding sources to the schools. And that concludes our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I'm going to first see if we have any comments or questions from the public.
Okay, there are currently no requests to speak.
I'm going to close the public hearing portion, and I'm going to see if Supervisor Arenas, if you'd like me to start, or you would like to start? Oh, you can go ahead. Are you sure? All right, so first of all, I just want to say I love the reports you do, and I want to say why. When folks come and share information with us, often when they don't include numbers, it's hard to understand how much we're spending, why we're spending, like all of those things are so critical. So I want to say thank you. I really appreciate it. And also really the detail of the types of referrals was really helpful. Just a couple of very high level questions that I have. And one is it's not directly to you, maybe a little more to Greta and team. And that is both as it relates to wellness centers and then the other services that are being provided. I know there's training going on with the schools and other partners so that they're going to be able to draw down insurance dollars for this work. And I wonder if you could just touch on where that is in process and how, does that impact schooling services in terms of your vision of the future of the services that may be able to be provided?
Celia, do you want to start with your answer to that question, and I can supplement whatever else I may have to add on that point?
Yes, so the state is in the process of working on this fee schedule. They call it the Schooling Services Fee Schedule. It's in process, and a group of LEAs will be participating in this fee schedule. They'll start January 2024. So the idea is that mild to moderate services would be able to be reimbursed to the schools when they provide those services. The impact to us would be related to the PEI program, the Prevention and Early Intervention Program, because we provide some of those mild to moderate services as well. But we have been thinking about this and planning for this, thinking about the expansion of the specialty mental health services on one end and the universal prevention services on the other end of the spectrum. I think there's still a lot to be learned from this fee schedule, and we won't know exactly how it's all going to turn out because there are a lot of different pieces that are involved, including a reimbursement from the managed care plans, billing to commercial insurances, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that are at stake and a lot of things that are coming down the pike for us in probably the next year. And Catherine, I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
So DHCS has put out like a preliminary scope of work of services that can be reimbursed, and that looks like psychoeducation, screening and assessments, therapy, and care coordination. So a lot of these services are provided at the schools by social workers or by marriage and family therapists, but there's not reimbursement being made for these services. So this really gives an opportunity for school districts, LEAs, to get reimbursement and sustain the staffing to support the needs of students.
Let me just raise a couple of thoughts that I have and some outcomes that I think we should be thinking about as the county. You know, one is that we use so much of our general fund, as we should, for these kinds of services. And we have other challenges with potentially money leaving our general fund, like ERAF. And I'm thinking about how much of our expansion of our program really rests on flexible funding, or how we think about flexible funding, and how the state's going to be taking some of that away. And even I'm a little concerned about some of the actions being taken at a federal level that I think ultimately will impact programs, and we're going to have to then compare all of the needs relative to making sure we're using general fund dollars to fill that void. What I'm very interested in getting back, and really I think we should be talking about this as part of the overall county budget, is the investments we're making in schooling services and even in the wellness centers, taking a look at what of that resource will we be able to, with our own areas, be able to, I mean, in the area, the services that we're providing, draw down that that money so that we can keep. I don't think this even means expanding. I think just means maintaining. But I also think, and it's a harder discussion to have, that we should be thinking about schooling services as a single set of services, irrespective of who are providing them. And I think the county, and it makes sense to me that we would be leaning in heavy to help the schools because so many of them are really constrained. And at the same time, if there are parts of the program that we all agree are valuable, then I'd like to see where we have opportunities where we need to continue to put in general fund, that we're really having those conversations with our partners so that the investments we're making are around a shared system of services. And I think now that the schools can get reimbursed, I think that does put us in a different kind of relationship with them in terms of who can provide what service. And frankly, I think they're going to potentially attract people to provide services for them that may not come to a nonprofit or wouldn't come to the county because they want to work in a school district. So I'm really interested in the sustainability and the shared investment strategy we have with those school partners around systems that we all think have value.
Yeah, I love this conversation, and I'll just say I think it's actually really consistent with a conversation that we're planning to bring forward and have with the board as part of the broader behavioral health update in November around this specific opportunity to try and draw down greater Medi-Cal funding to support work that we're doing with other funding streams that are either more scarce, like the general fund, or more uncertain, like some of the changes we know are coming down the pike with MHSA related funding. And I think an overall critical component of dealing with our budget deficit is being extremely focused on where are these opportunities to swap a historic use of general fund with the ability to draw down other funding streams, even if that means some pivoting a bit of the way that we're doing the services or how those services are being conducted. And I think that will be the sustainability plan for a lot of the service expansion that we've had the opportunity to initiate with general fund, but really need to wean off use of general fund for long term. The other thing that I would just say, you know, this specific opportunity related to schooling services and school district reimbursement is also baked into this much broader endeavor of the behavioral health department to leverage a lot of these changes around CalAIM, which are in the first year and thereafter quite destabilizing to behavioral health and all of our community providers. And the complexity is really high. The technology we need to leverage, we've invested in the best in class technology, but it's still really nascent and under development. There's a lot of really significant challenges. And so I would just say I want to express gratitude to this team, but also gratitude to the behavioral health team that's trying to not only do significant programmatic service expansion, but also really get right some of those very operationally complex transitions. And one of the things that we want to talk about is that really does need to be the number one priority of the department, is getting right this fiscal transition, because it really is the foundation on which the sustainability of all of the service, and especially the service expansion that we want to make happen, is built on. So
I think that sounds really important, and I know there's a way to talk about this in the budget context. There's also a really deep need to talk about this from a programmatic context. So I want to make sure that we're continuing to really lean on the program side in committee, but as we're having these broader budget conversations, I think that's really, really critical. The only other thing I just wanted to add is that I also think we're at a place with schooling services and with a number of other areas that it makes sense to me that we would be looking at kind of a different perspective on customer service. And let me just share what that is. I think as it relates to littles, and I consider littles like elementary school, tinies are babies, but the littles, that for them, getting services on campus I think, is understandable and makes a ton of sense in terms of parent access, making sure we can provide support to the kids. As it starts with middle and high school, some of the feedback I've gotten from young people, both about the wellness centers and about the services, is that there is some concern about getting services at school and some concern about even asking for services at school, and doing that in a way that doesn't make these teenagers feel on the spot. And I know so much is being done to destigmatize. So I think, I recognize that we're kind of, these are two issues that are going to be colliding a little bit. But I really want to encourage us to do some one-on-ones and focus groups with our clients, with kids, so that we better understand the appropriate design. I think we get enthusiastic as adults, and I which I get, and we want, and the wellness centers are a great example where I think they are really important from the perspective of having a center on campus where people are saying, yep, it's okay to not feel okay. I think that, in fact, I actually think it has more impact on the cultural stigma issue, maybe not more, but a significant amount of impact, probably, and I don't know what it is related to children actually getting services and help. That said, with the number of young people that we've been talking to about fentanyl and other issues, I've just asked them, how are you getting services? If you're not okay, where do you go? And the high number of them that will not use a school service has really surprised me, and especially given your numbers are incredible. So clearly you're getting a good number of young people who need services. So the question is, anyway, my only point is I would love us to do some focus groups as we're thinking about the way we're providing services today and what we anticipate in the coming years, especially in alignment with the sustainability question, because some services may make sense to have offsite, others may not. You are the experts, but these young people sharing this with me, it surprised me how many of them told me they won't use them on campus. I'm sure you hear that too. I'm not telling you something you haven't heard also.
No, we've heard that as well. And yes, around the stigma and just the mental health awareness that's happening. I think that there's opportunities where, of course, bringing in the youth voice and ensuring that we hear about the program design, wellness center design, and the needs that they have is really important as we continuously look at sustainability of our programs and our designing and revamping of programs.
Would you mind, as you're thinking about this next phase of work, could you just explain, as you're doing these reports, the strategies we're currently using to engage really meaningful youth voice? And I think that would be just enormously helpful, and both in terms of even how we prioritize what we're going to spend money on. They should tell us what works and what doesn't. I'm in awe of the number of them that are playing a leadership role on their campuses to make mental health okay. And then also recognize, like one young person told me something I didn't think about. They said, well, it's not just mental health you have to worry about. Like people will think you're talking about them. Like if you have a conflict with a colleague at school, you know, you don't want to be seen as like talking about your friends with somebody else. And that didn't even occur to me. That's how long it's been since I've been in high. I was like, wow. But anyway, good feedback. All right, thank you. And anyway, in the reports, if you can just embed in the concrete tools and how we're gathering those youth, where are they coming from? Because who we should be trying to talk to are the kids we're not serving, which I know is doubly hard to get. But all right, thank you for indulging me.
No, those are really wonderful questions and a lot of answers that I had. I mean, a lot of questions that I had already, as well. So thank you, Chair. One of the questions I had was around the tiers, and let me take a step back. I was really impressed with the number of students that are being served.
It's amazing.
It's very amazing. I love it. And then when I saw the breakdown in terms of who's being served, where they're being served, also took a look at who's not being served. So there was an overrepresentation of Latino students, even though Latino students make up 42% of the total student population. They are making up, I believe, 70% of the usage, 71% of the usage. And so we also know that there's the language that's mostly requested is in Spanish, correct? And so because we know this, and I know that every school is different, the school knows what works best for them, and so that's why I'm going to guess that a lot of these events, whether they're one-time or series-based, and the one-time is under Tier 1, a series I'm going to guess is under Tier 2 because it's more than one and it's a cycle. What are we, if anything, creating a baseline to determine what are some of the best practices for Tier 1 and Tier 2? And the reason I ask is because these events just vary. I'm going to go back to the language in a minute, but these events vary greatly. So, for example, in Elm Rock Union, the Elm Rock School District, they have a City of San Jose Scholarship Presentation Spanish evening session. And then they have their ESL classes for parents, ECOP at Dorsa Middle School. But then we have schools like the Eastside Union High School District, where they have the series, they have two series. One is a re-engagement event and one is a parent círculo. And for the one-time event, we have something like a Evergreen CBO check-in. So I'm wondering, what are we determining are some of the best practices that help with a Tier 1 versus a Tier 2? And are we requesting a minimum in terms of the type of event that is being held at each of these schools, so that we can know that we're making a difference in those interventions? Otherwise, these are just events that may be happening at the school that serves a purpose, like coffee with the principal. I don't know if that would be a best practice for a Tier 1 or not.
So part of the Schooling Services Initiative and the Family Engagement Program is to include a campus collaborative, and that's where the SLS coordinator would organize a meeting with community members, teachers, as well as students, family, community voice administration to really identify what the needs are and then look at family engagement activities that can support the needs. So that's where some of the ideas are coming from, is these campus collaboratives. Other ideas or other supports that are being identified is really also something that has been well attended in previous years, because they are seeing those as more of like an annual event that would happen. But we have looked at with the SLS coordinators about various types of events that we could promote or they can promote based on what's available or based on certain times of the year. So like May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we really encourage utilizing a documentary screening of angst to help bring in discussions about mental health and anxiety. Recently at Campbell Union School District, they did a documentary for the Race to Be Human to discuss racism among students and among the community, and that encouraged a whole group of families and students to come in and watch that documentary series and discuss opportunities of restorative justice practices in the school. And that was really helpful because they started that presentation or that documentary screening to set up for what's going to be provided in the classroom for 4th and 5th graders throughout the rest of the school year, that they will be watching this documentary screening around race and discrimination. So those are some of the ways that we're looking at it. We really look at more of this Tier 1 services that can be serviced to everybody. So looking at psychoeducation around, definitely around depression, anxiety, mental health awareness. But the Tier 2 services, the skills groups.
So let me stop you right there.
Oh, sure.
So Catherine, would you then qualify coffee with the principal? If you just described that for Tier 1, would that fit?
Yes, because we're looking at it as an open space to have dialogue with the principal, also looking at as it could be used to gather information for the needs to put in family engagement events or to identify family engagement events.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm just intrigued with that question. I think what would be helpful to understand is, so some of these events would happen no matter what. I think that's a good point. And the question is, are they listed here because we actually use them for an opportunity to explore mental health or another service we're providing, or does it simply go in the category of activities that are happening at the schools so that you're aware of what those are?
I would say it's a combination of both. The SLS coordinators are facilitating or organizing these cafecitos with the principal. They're also organizing different events to put out information about mental health or about services and how to access, but also to obtain information about needs.
So just so I'm clear, Catherine, so I had made an assumption, I'm so glad you're asking these questions, because I'd made an assumption that those particular activities were connected to services that we were providing, because principals doing coffees doesn't require, I mean, they do that at every school, I assume, or they should be. So it could be that there's an event and we're quantifying just that activity happened at the school, which could have happened whether we were there or not, and potentially others that would be included are where we are actually having engagement with parents on subject matters that we're responsible for as a county. Interesting. Okay, sorry, thank you. I didn't understand.
No worries. I just think that we need to be intentional about those Tier 1 activities so that they are not varied in terms of, one, what their purpose is and what actually gets done. And so I could see the link between coffee with the principal or cafecitos, right? If we're building in that question about how are your children doing socially and emotionally, right? If the principal actually poses that question. If the principal doesn't, I don't know how we are going to relate to that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of feedback between, with the parents. As a parent, I have a lot of feedback that I want to give to my principal any day of the week because I'm a mom. And that's what we do as moms, right? We love to give feedback. So I think for those activities, I'd love to see what that psychoeducation is, if there's any mental health conversation happening there, what kind of touch and refer is happening within that tier 1. I think that, for me, would be a lot more meaningful instead of this list of just activities of what they do. Because it sounds like, and it's great to be efficient, it might be a coordinator that's already doing something else on site and then also is an SLS coordinator, and sometimes that just works out really well, right? But I'd like to see that there's more intentionality happening with these events. And certainly referrals being offered, or a service for a referral being offered. We learned things about our children. One, that Latinos are overrepresented. And so I would also, as we're moving along and as we are continuing to fund SLS coordinators, and the activities that they schedule, or the series that they schedule, that we would ask them also, how are they taking into account what we're learning back from some of the, surveys, the surveys that you all did. And so that it's a cycle, right? So that they continue to feed that. So one of the things that I'll expect to see is more bilingual events in those tiers and more bilingual events in those series. The second thing would be that I'm going to guess, and I think that we heard back from you, Catherine, in terms of that you all are aware that there's more immigrant children entering our school districts. And so because of that, there's also a different dynamic with those folks, right? And these are newly arrived children and families that come from different countries, they're not just from Mexico. And they're fleeing for a lot of the times political reasons. And so I think there is a different level of service that needs to be rendered to those children, and how is our system pivoting and shifting to make sure that we are supporting them in a very meaningful way. And then I also saw that employment was really important for those families, access to ESL classes, mental health for adults and children, housing and food assistance. And so then I would also expect to see that either the series are connected to some of those predominant, those school districts that have those children and those particular students that are overrepresented this way. So that there is some logic to our our tier 1 and our tier 2. So I'm going to move on from that, because I think I see you nodding. I think you agree with this direction, and I'm going to ask about how are we. I'm concerned about the difference in terms of students unduplicated that are being served. Say, for example, in San Jose Unified, it's a huge school district. There's only one SLS coordinator, even though I believe that you've all offered additional services and support to them. No, San Jose Unified. San Jose Unified. So there's 26,000 students, and Chair, there's only, the number of students served by SLS coordinator is 157. So that's about 1% of that. When I know that we get a lot of San Jose Unified students into our system of care, and I know this because I've done this directly, and I'm going to guess that that trend has not changed in many, many, many years. Many, many, many years in between when I used to do that. I'm sorry. I know, it was like many, many, many. Okay, so that's the other piece. So how do we continue to hold our school districts responsible? I pose this question, but I also have a bit of an answer because, of course, I think that there was a really great work that was done with Evergreen. I'll speak specifically about my district. And I think there was a bit of a, although we didn't coordinate exactly, but I've had follow-up conversations with Evergreen, and I don't know that they understood exactly what it was that they needed to do. And so, and I think they needed to have a little bit of political pressure. Good old political pressure. So I think that there is an opportunity for us as electeds to have conversations with those who are elected in other school districts who also are on the same page and can help move the system along in a very different way than by administration or by staff, simply because there's different dynamics. Not to say that, you know, it isn't effective in terms of, obviously, you're getting a lot done. I mean, just this whole matrix with all of the number of children that are being served is absolutely tremendous. And so I apologize if I'm focusing only on some of the things that I caught that concerned me. And so it doesn't mean that, obviously, that there's wonderful, wonderful work being done. I'm just concerned about some of the numbers of students being supported through our schooling services. And because this is one of the very few ways that we actually get onto campus, right? This is one of the few ways that we actually do this, especially for our elementary school districts, that I want us to be as efficient as possible. There's certain school districts that have no problem doing this, and I think I saw it in your example, like Franklin McKinley School District has a whole system of care. My daughter we had an experience with them because she's part of a dual immersion program in Evergreen, but before they opened up, we went to Franklin McKinley because they had their dual immersion first. And then we went back to our home school. And so I got to see the actual difference, and it is huge. When a child is actually having some issues, and my daughter was having some issues during the pandemic, just like many other children, a lot of anxiety and just fear, yes, and a lot of stress, they were able to support her in a way that I haven't seen another school district do. So I always, and this is a conversation I have with school board members, how do we build that system of care for our children? Because Evergreen School District has a really good reputation, but there's a lot of children in there that are just middle class and they're not at that very high-end school, so they don't have these rich resources, and they're not at the lower end in terms of socioeconomic schools that a lot of our CBOs focus on and target, and then have a lot of supports in order to make sure that our children are well. Some of our kids are just in the middle, right? And so I want us to make sure that we're capturing and maximizing this tool that we have, or at least I see this as an opportunity for us to make a difference for our kiddos on school sites. So I'll stop there. Although I would like to also understand. No, I'm not going to stop there. I also would like to understand how we're connecting what we've learned so far in terms of the surveys and the feedback that we've received through informal or formal process. How is that feeding the wellness center opportunities? Because, say, for example, some of the schools that are receiving a lot more of our recently arrived children, I would assume that they would then submit the possibility could be there that they submit an RFP proposal that could identify that area because they need more additional support. And so I'm not sure if you're connecting these two things, and or how will what we know through this report inform the wellness center grants, and who receives what.
Thank you for the question, Supervisor Ennis. As part of the application process, we did encourage the school district and LEAs to describe the needs within the student population that may not be seen through the data sources that we have. So we may not be seeing through our public data systems about the number of immigrants that are coming into these school districts, but they have opportunities to put into the application about what the recent trends that they're seeing, what the needs are, and that will also be included in the evaluation.
Are we building out, because we know that there is more interest or there's more representation in Latino children and families, how are we addressing that with our wellness center grants? Is there...
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So if we know that children are being overrepresented in our system, whether it's tier 1 or tier 2, and we have this opportunity for wellness grants, right? Will you take that into consideration for some of those schools? How are we asking those schools to be responsive to the information that we know? I know that they are privy to some of this information that we don't know in terms of the immigrant children coming into their system. Obviously, they have to tell us that. Mm-hmm. But how are we holding them responsible to include some of what we know and what we've learned through this?
I think that there's a lot of opportunities where, not just right now, but when the grants are awarded, that behavioral health as well as our other community-based organizations and partners can help support and provide technical assistance to supporting this, the Wellness Center implementation, and really look at best practices around specific communities or around specific ethnic groups that we could provide assistance with. So there's certain evidence-based practices that could be utilized in for students or for families that are immigrants or from different ethnic cultures, as well as best practices that we've seen that they're more receptive to.
I would also encourage you to connect with our immigrant affairs department. They've just finished a huge report. And so I think that data could also help inform how we fund the future grants that are coming in. I really want to thank you for helping us and supporting us with our specific district and making sure that we move along. I think this is really important, and it comes to my point about those children in the middle sometimes get lost, right? It's the Jan Brady's of the world. Oh my God, it is so lost on this audience, but
I got you.
So these children that are in the middle, they're not quite here or there, and so I would love to see those children targeted better. And so I really am grateful for the work that you've done with us in terms of the Evergreen School District. I'm really excited about them actually approving the MOU, getting more services in, and more importantly, having our children supported in a better way. And then I'll also look to see that there's in those grants that there's also a focus on a new zip code, which is 951119, which is around the Oak Grove School District. And that has been seen as a high-risk zip code as well. So anyways, I think, did you want to?
No, I was just going to make a motion, but I was waiting for I was writing down your thing, and I just was like, wow, I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Oak Grove, yeah.
Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 new zip codes as high risk. Sounds like you have a motion.
Oh, well, so let me see if I captured it. So first, we're going to recommend that we receive the report And then we're asking for the following information to be included in future report outs. One is that we do develop a sustainability plan both through the budget process, but that here in this committee will be focusing on continued program development and where we see opportunities, including funding trends that may create opportunities for the work that you're doing. Salud. Two, that we are making sure that we're doing client engagement. I'm particularly interested in that with middle school students and high school students, particularly those who won't use a service that's on campus, to see how we meet their needs. Three, that as it relates to the uses of the series descriptions in terms of being intentional, so that we're using the gatherings and activities for further developing and connecting people to programs and students to programs. And so what I think that really means is irrespective of the series, that there's evidence that the gatherings that we're quantifying are intentional in terms of meeting the needs of the community. And what I would suggest is that when this report comes back, based on the feedback that just listening to Supervisor Arenas, is that we have a more refined definition of under what terms and conditions we're including activities and refining the outcomes that we anticipate that they have for the student population and their parents. Does that capture your thinking there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And then that, just this is a reminder to engage the board of supervisors if we're in need of further support in getting schools engaged with the program. And I think she used the example of Evergreen, but San Jose Unified is an opportunity as well. You have a former board member on our board, so we should take advantage of that. And then that in the wellness grants or other grants, that we're making sure that we're looking at opportunities to address very high-need populations such as immigrants, and what that would mean in terms of making sure both that the schools know that they can use that. I think you identified that you could, that you're encouraging them to do that, that we really are encouraging emerging trends to be both part of how they apply, and that we're accepting that as a higher need point in the point system, because we're recognizing there's a higher need for the population. And that we're making sure that through that body of work, that there is a connection to the Office of Immigrant Relations as well, as you're further exploring opportunities to increase access for students. I think that I got the biggies. Did I forget anything?
Oh, and then to also link some of or consider the high-risk zip codes that were identified.
And to consider high-risk zip codes as well that have been identified.
The
in
newly identified.
Newly identified. Does that make sense? All right, to the clerk,
does.
I try to repeat it back as slowly as I can, so you guys aren't mad at me when you're listening to the recordings. Okay. So with that, I want to see if any of our colleagues on the dais have any feedback they want to give. I know that was a long conversation, but no? Yes, Sarah?
Thanks, Supervisor. Just a quick comment. On consent is the Youth Task Force, their annual plan. I think it's number 19, and they do have identified one of their priorities is helping support youth voice in the area of mental and emotional health. So they have a lot of different activities planned, and behavioral health is actually coming to the next Youth Task Force meeting to start that collaboration and work. So I think some of the pieces that you mentioned around youth voice, they really want to be out working with students to get a lot more input on what they want to see out of wellness centers. So I think we can expect some good collaboration there.
Absolutely. I met with them. They are no joke. They are very fierce young people. We're going to be in good hands in the future in this county. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Seeing no other comments, I'm going to ask for a motion. Oh, I'll make the motion. May I have a second?
Second.
All right.
All right. Vice Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez?
Thank you so much. And thank you really, truly, for the thoughtful feedback and discussion. We're going to move on to item 5, and this is our Welcoming Center report. And I am going to ask the staff to come forward, and then also ask if you would like a brief presentation first, or do you have questions or comments?
For what?
Item 5. This is a Welcoming Center.
Oh, yeah.
You want a presentation or no? Okay. And if we could have a presentation would be great. Thank you. Welcome. I don't know if your mic's on, Damien.
Better?
Yes, excellent. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, Vice Chair Arenas. Damian Wright, Director of Department of Family and Children Services, and I'll have my colleague introduce herself.
Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Singh. I'm a Senior Research and Evaluation Specialist with DFCS.
Welcome.
Before you is a report in regards to an update on the Welcoming Center, evaluation and next steps to transition the Welcoming Center to county oversight. We would respectfully ask the supervisors if they would like us to go through the presentation and or if they would like us to jump to questions.
I think if you wouldn't mind to do a brief presentation would be helpful. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. DFCS is continuing the process of transitioning the Welcoming Center to county operational oversight. Together with Central Services, DFCS continues to review potential properties suitable for DFCS Welcoming Center for a future recommendation to go to the Space Committee. The timeline for DFCS to assume operational oversight of the Welcoming Center continues to be impacted by the licensing application and review process, which goes through CDSS. The application was submitted on June 14th, 2023 to California Department of Social Services, Community Care Licensing Division, and it is still waiting review and approval. DFCS has been meeting with CCL staff to discuss the progress of the application. We last had our meeting on August 16th, 2023. And in that discussion, we talked about a particular process around the guardian fingerprinting process, which is what CDSS holds, and there's a backlog with that process. Once the license is approved and DFCS assumes oversight, Seneca, which is the current provider of the Welcoming Center, will continue to provide just direct care for children and youth who are admitted, and they will also be responsible for the supervision, evaluation, and training of those direct care staff. The DFCS Social Services Program Manager 3 has been already hired and completed the training and obtained the Group Home Administrator certification, a requirement for the licensure that we're trying to obtain. DFCS is in the process of recruiting other management staff to move forward in the licensing process. Also, finally, DFCS is in the process of scheduling our fire inspection with the San Jose Fire Department, which is required for residential care facilities. Next slide.
I'll briefly go over the results of the last quarterly report. So this report pretty much used the same methodology that we've been using for the several previous quarterly reports. We compared a baseline group of children who entered care between April and June of 2022. They were compared with the cohort group who entered care between April, June, same time period of 2023. So we're basically seeing the same trend, a reduction in the number of children entering foster care. The baseline group from last year was 58 children compared to 48 children who entered this year. Something interesting we saw this time was that of all children entering care, a higher rate were placed with relative NERFM in this cohort versus baseline. It was actually almost 3 times higher, so 15% in the baseline group, 41% in the cohort group that went through this year. This is a bit of an anomaly. We have not seen this trend in previous quarterly reports. There was actually a downward trend. So we are interested to see in the next annual report, quantitatively speaking, does this data hold? Is it an actual trend? And qualitatively speaking, understand from staff what might have changed that led to this increase in relative NERFM for this quarter, and once again, see if that continues. And then moving on to this table, this is
May I just interrupt to say, just for our members of the public who may not be familiar with the term NERFM, can you just make sure everyone understands what that refers to?
Yes, what the full acronym is
It
non-relative.
is non-related extended family member. It's basically your godparents, your play mom. Those would be people considered to be a NEFRM.
Thank you. Too many acronyms. Yeah, I agree. So this table is looking specifically at welcoming center data. So this is where the children, when they're removed, typically stay for 24 hours, or it's licensed at least for 24 hours. So we can see here when we're looking at the average number of days in the welcoming center. For children in the baseline group, it was 0.9 days on average. That nearly tripled for this current cohort group, where they were staying 2.5 days on average. So this is an overstay. And when we look at the average overstay, we're seeing that youth who stayed beyond 24 hours, First of all, there was an increase in percentage. So in the baseline group, 21% of the cohort overstayed, whereas in the cohort group, it was actually 33%. And also we can see the length of overstay more than tripled, so from 1.9 days to 6.1 days. And we think this is because of a higher number of high acuity youth who are now going through foster care and subsequently the Welcoming Center. If you go to the next slide, please, I think Damon can talk about that programmatic.
While there continues to be a reduction of the number of children entering foster care, those who have higher acuity needs across multiple domains, including behavioral health, child welfare, probation, education, and other systems, that number increases in regards to complex youth coming into our system. Their treatment services require service delivery coordination, which is occurring between DFCS, Behavioral Services Department, Probation, SCCOE, Santa Clara County Office of Education, and SARC, our San Andreas Regional Center, through the Children and Youth System of Care, which is AB 2083 legislation, which prompts us to have this partnership. This collaboration across systems meets the needs of the children, youth, and families, including timely access to trauma-informed services. DFCS is also engaging community providers to identify opportunities to expand the continuum with additional higher levels of care. Through that innovative model of care, the county is also able to design innovative programs or models of care and services to support foster youth who have complex needs, who would otherwise not be successful in STRTP, regular STRTP, which is short-term residential treatment programs, the congregate care model, which is basically staff supporting those youth. Two such programs are the STRTP of 1 and the STRTP of 2 models, which provide new and original ways the youth's needs are able to be addressed, and there's some timely access to needed services, as well as different designs of support. In one of those particular designs, it moves away from a staffing model to having a resource parent in that home. So they also get the level of care they need, but they are in a home-based situation. And then I'll turn it over to Kali.
Sure, thank you, Damien. And I'll just wrap up by talking about the next.
Your mic's off.
Thank you. The steps of the evaluation. So the next quarterly reports will continue this kind of cross-sectional analysis. So again, comparing baseline and cohorts, see what differences are and if we're seeing any trends. However, we're also adding in some more qualitative components. So one of those is that we'll be interviewing early next year 6 to 10 Welcoming Center staff. The objective is really to understand what their definition is of high acuity youth. So what does that mean to them? What behaviors are they seeing that they define as high acuity? What are some successful strategies they're utilizing to address their needs? And do they have the need for any more supports or trainings that might help better address those needs? And then another approach we're looking at is a human-centered design approach. And this is really the approach to kind of co-create findings using community voice. So 2 areas that were identified last year, this was RDA that had conducted this part of the evaluation. One of the findings was that resource families shared that there were challenges when they were taking in a child and not receiving full information. So they felt that they weren't getting necessarily timely information or full information of the child. That might have affected how prepared they felt for that. That being said, there are, of course, challenges on the staff side as well as far as how they're obtaining that information and when they're obtaining that information. So the objective for this process is really to have them both go through kind of a journey mapping exercise, share what that process and experience looks like from their side as far as getting that information, sharing that information, and what it feels like for families to have or not have the information they need, and to then work together to ideally co-create a solution that's both feasible and acceptable to both of them. So that, hopefully that would be translated into practice. And the next area, similarly using this human-centered design approach, would be around youth. This is going back to the Welcoming Center. So for this, we're proposing working with youth 18 plus who went through the Welcoming Center anytime from January 2022 through mid of this year. So as you know, it's licensed for 24 hours, and there's an intake process they go through. So we are aware of what that process looks like from the perspective of staff, but we really don't know what it feels like for a youth who's going through there. So what is that process, but really, what are they experiencing? What are they feeling? What's comfortable? What's perhaps not so comfortable? So really hearing from them in that process, what's working well, and how can it be improved. And again, the goal here really is to hear from them and understand their perspectives, but also have them give direct input into how that experience can be improved for them. So the dissemination for both of these would ultimately be to present back to those who are giving us the information, so presenting back to both DFCS and Welcoming Center staff, presenting back to the resource parents, presenting back to the youth. And ideally, again, here the goal is that those could directly affect practice. So this is just in line with the model of the evaluation so far, which is one, translating research into practice, and two, really incorporating both that community and staff voice into program improvement. So those are some of the goals for the evaluation moving forward. Thank you.
With that, it concludes our report, our presentation, and we're open to any questions.
Thank you so much. First, I'm going to see if there's any public comment on this item.
There is currently no one who would like to speak for this item.
Then I'm going to close the public hearing component of this. And, first, I just want to say I know this has been a very long journey and really appreciate the direction that we're going in. One request I want to make is that I think that given all the changes in state law relative to how we're supporting, families and foster youth, that it in some ways is a little challenging to look at these numbers absent the approaches that we're taking. And while they were touched on in here, I think what's difficult is to use this single slice as a framework for doing a proper assessment of what we're learning. So what I appreciate is the year over year, because it allows you to think a little bit about, where we are in process. And yet, I think this really requires us to have to look at the continuum a little more broadly in terms of, for example, who's not coming in, what do these numbers look like over a trending time, and then I think it would help us even better define long-term what that welcoming center function really looks like and how it functions. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think very consistent with what you just said, a challenge we were discussing actually just this morning at Space Committee is we're trying to continue to make progress on building the welcoming center that we need and all want in the future, while, as you mentioned, dealing with the fact that we're in a very intense period of transition in how the state is regulating and licensing these facilities. And so just wanted to mention that I think, which is inherent in the report, where we are experiencing some delays and some challenges, kind of solidifying some of our plans for the future, in part because we also need to be prepared to pivot as the state once again kind of revisits in the wake of its, for example, closure of group homes statewide, the challenges that people have had operating these STRTPs, knowing that they're looking at innovations in the way they're approaching licensing, just to be prepared to pivot. And so we're poised to tackle those challenges, but we're also at times, as was reflected in the early part of this report, in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting for clarity on what we're even allowed to do.
Yeah, and I think that's very helpful. I will say this, that one of the challenges that I'm feeling in this role, and I can't imagine how you're feeling it in your roles, is that I don't know that we have the right partners assisting us with the analysis part of the work. And what I mean by that is that there are so many changes happening along the continuum. So there's the points that you just raised that are part of this piece. There are the new homes. There are I think there are trends we're seeing in higher needs, like children with much higher needs that require a much higher level of support than perhaps we saw 10 years ago, both understanding why that is, how the law changes may actually be even furthering that, then and then the very good work I think you've done with family finding. I mean, like, let's just be frank, we weren't doing that 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe we started about 5 years ago. So what I would just really want to encourage, and it isn't, this genuinely isn't a criticism, it may be an approach that we want to think about, and that is investing a little more in a much more skilled set of evaluators that will be able to assist you all in taking a step back and seeing all the amazing things that you've been putting in place and how our partners are handling that, and then being able to look at that trend. And I have to say, I recognize that one challenge we have is when we look at 2020 to 2022, it's almost like it puts a wrinkle in every single analysis that we do. But that said, you were long on the road to change and reform for quite a while. And again, I think that's not necessarily something we've been able to really do a deep analysis on, to say these 3 or 4 steps we're taking are really making a difference in families' lives. These other things maybe we don't want to keep doing. I just feel like we haven't had that discussion yet.
If I can add to that, Chair Chavez, so there's actually opportunities, and we've done some of this. One of those actually partnering with our Office of Research and Evaluation, which is how we have Khalid to work with us, as well as partnering with the Office of Research Evaluation. Also myself, Daniel Little, our SSA director, is having conversations with the state and Child Welfare Directors Association in regards to how are we looking at the entire continuum. There was a significant shift just a year ago where even the state assumed understanding of how there's been a lot of shifts in the type of youth that we are dealing with and coming into care, and hence you now start to hear about the crisis continuum, which is all of these different facilities that through the complex funding that we're able to draw down, as well as through the innovative model of care, we're able to pivot, like Credit talked about, in regards to structuring our system. I do agree there needs to be definitely some more work in regards to how we're looking at this in totality, but I think we're moving in the right direction in regards to how we're trying to put it together.
Thank you, and I think thank you for reminding me about the Office of Research and Evaluation and Development. One of the challenges I think is because I read so many of your reports, the level of analysis is so different in them that sometimes it's hard for me to understand how you all are able to tie it all together, just because they do seem so dramatically different. At least, again, from where I sit.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Chavez. I was going to add to something that Damien had mentioned, which was the Assembly Bill 2083, which all counties were required to develop this relationship with stakeholders around caring for foster youth with the purpose of coordinating care. So we have a really robust group that includes child welfare, probation, behavioral health, public health, County Office of Ed, our regional center. And I think one of the opportunities we have, I think you mentioned, is really to look at that. How are we defining success? What does the system have now, and where are the gaps? So I know that that's work that group is doing, and maybe that's something that we can bring back here in a future report.
Oh, that would be helpful, because, that would actually, because what you're talking about is what you're doing in real time and not waiting for an analysis. That's good feedback. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sylvia, did you have anything on this item?
So I know that there's a lot kind of up in the air in terms of when we're going to do this transition. As soon as we get the licensing, and that piece is up in the air. What we do know is that our kids are staying longer, right? And their needs are greater. And short of having, there's nothing that we can really do to encourage medication or engagement in their mental health provider. Although I'm hoping that there are some things that we're thinking about, and hopefully it's within this this framework that you talked about. Tell me again what the framework is, the model that you're going to.
I think you're referring to the STRTP of 1 or 2, which is a pretty much innovative design of a short-term residential treatment program that's really geared towards the youth that are participating in that program.
Right. Thank you. And one of the things that you pointed out, or the consultant pointed out, is that families felt unprepared to care for the children in their care because either they didn't have all the information, there was a transition of workers, and so there was a loss of that information. So that is something that we do have under our control, and I'm wondering, what is it that we are going to do in order to make sure that there isn't that loss of information for those foster parents? It's so important to keep those. I understand you have good retention, not only of foster care parents, but of our social workers, and they're moving on with internally, and that's understandable, but they're still there. And so I think it's important for us to tap them on the shoulder, even though they're across in the different office or in a different cubicle down the hallway, in order to make sure that these kiddos are successful in their transition, especially because the numbers aren't, it's not, yeah, these are not like unmanageable numbers, correct?
Yes, so we're doing some innovative things in regards to internally how we're looking at things. I myself are trying to engage all of those resource parents that you may be talking about that definitely are there. They've been long-standing partners with us, and they also see the difficulty in supporting complex youth. So we're starting to engage in conversations with those resource parents to say, this is where we are. What are some opportunities we can do to partner together a little bit better?
And
there's
what,
al- go ahead, I'm
what were those? What was the feedback?
So I think in a couple of conversations that I've had very specifically, not only with resource parents themselves, but also our service organizations that provide support to those resource parents, is they really want an invested communication pipeline to make sure when there's real-time concerns, not only the department, but service providers, as well as others in the community that support that particular youth or are supposed to support that particular youth in the home. How do we have that type of communication real time to support the youth? So that goes back to what Daniel Little talked about in regards to our AB 2083 work. How do we build out our system of care to really support communication, cross-collaboration across all of our different departments, especially making sure that us as DFCS are responding pretty quickly in regards to any things that occur with a youth, no matter the time of the day.
So that's still in the pipeline in terms of how to build that real-time communication?
It is in place. I think it can be more refined. There's opportunities for conversation. We have our Quality Parenting Initiative, which also talks about certain benchmarks that we want to look at, as well as certain behaviors that we want to focus in on as a team. And so that's some of the work that we're focused in on. So things are there in place. I think we are just trying to refine how that looks.
It would be great to get an off-agenda report on what that real-time communication framework is going to look like. So I would love to have that. And I'll make a motion to accept the report and include an off-agenda report on the real-time communication. Second. Thank you. The other area, so that's real-time communication between the foster resource parents and DFCS staff. And so I think that's really important, and thank you so much for making sure that there's that real time communication. Although it still doesn't answer my question about how transitions being dealt with differently, since there's not that many children in this welcoming center, and part of the issue as recognized by the consultant was that there was a transition of staff. So how is that addressed?
So there's a couple of things that we're focused on. One is an actual transition plan that's in place. Staff are aware of that and are able to use it and have been using that. The other piece.
Did that transition plan so sorry to interrupt you, was that transition plan in place previously? Was that always in existence?
It wasn't always in existence. It was, there was a draft form that we were using in regards to some of the conversation that we were having in piloting some things, in making sure when that youth first got there, there were conversations with the resource parent, the social worker, maybe even the parents to do some work around that. Those are the things that we were doing, and now we're formalized in the sense of there's an actual transition plan that staff can utilize to help guide that process. The other piece is we actually established a team of our executives as well as our senior managers to focus on this very specific population. And what that entails is having very intense conversations weekly to make sure that all of the avenues that we can look at for these particular youth are looked at. A lot of this is also really having conversation with the state in looking at opportunities for particular placements, as well as trying to bridge some of the work that needs to happen as to youth that are resistant to placements, they're resistant to services or treatment. There's been a coordinated effort to re-engage those youth. We've been successful with several of those youth to say, yes, we're willing to now go to placement, and those youth have moved on to placement. So that's been a really successful strategy for us. The other piece is we're really focused on our child and family team meetings. And that is the framework, if you will, of how not only us as a county child welfare department, but how the state looks at how should we be making decisions around children and where they go and where they live. One of those core pieces is family voice, making sure the youth and the family are part of that conversation. That process has been in place for years. And I think we've gotten really good at re-engaging families that have not necessarily wanted to be a part of that process. And now with some of the strategies that we've learned for some of our family engagement work that Chair Chavez talked about, as well as other things, we've kind of shifted that and allowed for better conversations to happen with those families, as well as for different outcomes to happen. And you see that in some of the data that we're sharing in regards to all of these different family placements that we were able to obtain that didn't necessarily happen several years ago.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So it sounds like you're using the transition plan internally as one of the tools to ensure that there isn't anything lost, as well as the family and child team meetings, and then reaching out to the state to ensure that there's that re-engagement with youth. And it sounds like you've set up some weekly conversations internally at a staff level and at executive level. So hopefully we will see a difference in the welcoming center. I'm just concerned that and I'm glad some of these things are getting sorted out now, so that when when you all take this over, all those lessons learned are policies that are in place and standard operating procedures for us to get back into the system more efficiently and really more compassionately for our kiddos. I don't know if I missed this, but what were the female to male or other gender ratios for those kids who are coming in?
It's generally been fairly split. I think this last report, there might have been a bit more female to male, but if I'm looking at all of them in totality, all the reports so far, it's been fairly even.
Fairly even?
Yeah.
One of the things I think that would also I would like to see is for some of those, for the youth that are coming through the Welcome Center, if there is any sexual assault, human trafficking, or intimate partner violence impacts.
We can definitely add that information, Vice Chair Arenas. We can. There's a particular field, if you will, that identifies youth as commercially sexually exploited youth, and that can be a particular domain that we can add to this report.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to receive the report by me with an off-agenda report regarding real-time communication. So we better understand that. And a request from me through the county exec's office, just to better help us understand the research and evaluation opportunities relative to this overall subject. I don't want to give direction because you gave me good feedback. I think we just lifted up some issues, and I'm interested long-term in how we continue to address the continuum.
Thank you, Supervisor. I think perhaps how we'll come back with that is consistent with Dan's suggestion that we bring forward a report on that to an upcoming CSFC once they're ready to present it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
We'll bring that back.
But I also wanted to give you the flexibility to determine the timing of that, given that there's so much in flux right now.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second. What? Actually, I made the motion and you seconded it.
You did it already?
Yes.
Oh, good job. All right, then I'll just add that one piece about the staff coming back on the research and evaluation strategies.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. And Vice Chairperson Arenas
Yes.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Thank you so much. Yes. All right, we're going to move on to item 6. And this is the status update report relating to the Joint Foster Youth Task Force recommendations. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Arenas and members of the board. Wendy Kinnear-Rausch, one of the assistant directors with Department of Family and Children's Services, and with me is one of my colleagues.
Good afternoon. I'm off. Dr. Joanne Vars, Director of Educational Services for Homeless and Foster Youth at the Santa Clara County Office of Education, on behalf of our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Mary M. Dewan.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we have brought back to you brief updates on a few of the initiatives being championed by the Joint Foster Youth Task Force. I know we've been short on time, so I'll ask you both if you would like a brief presentation or if you'd like to move straight to questions.
Did you have questions on this one? Do you mind, and may I ask just for context, let me just say a couple things. One, I really appreciate you being focused on time, and I'd love a brief presentation. Two, I just wanted to acknowledge that we began this Joint Foster Youth Task Force as one of our earlier partnerships with the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and some of this came out of the Mayor's Gang Task Force because I serve on the policy board there. And we were having a discussion about how many of our kids were ending up on all sides of, like they were in foster care, but to your point, were they being trafficked, like all of those questions. And so what came out of that was the decision to put together this task force that spent maybe a year and a half just really focusing on issues that were being brought up both by the young people themselves, the foster families, their parents, and all of our professional organizations. So this is, I'm excited to hear your update, and we'll go to the public after that, and then we'll come back to the board.
Absolutely, thank you. And I will be brief with some of those, and really do hope you hear in this, these are pieces of work that has been weaved in for the most part into work that is happening across child welfare as well as with our partner agencies. So these are just pieces of some of that work. So the first recommendation I wanted to circle back around on really had to do with our partnership with our hotline, our Child Abuse and Neglect Center. And this was about making sure that those families with calls that came in really did get warm handoffs to CBO agencies, our community-based organizations. This was originally launched as Neighbor to Neighbor. It has been renamed as SAFE, or Supporting All Families Equitably. So our updates on this, we went out for proposals to the community. We have awarded those proposals to 3 different contractors, our Gardner Health Initiative, Pacific Clinics, and Rebecca Children's Services. They have had their award letters. We are now actively in the process of building out those contracts in order to serve community. We are being mindful of language and culture and really focused in on engagement for those. We anticipate that we will be finalizing those contracts in November, and then we'll bring those back to the board to present, and we'll be launching those services in early 2024. And I don't know if you want me to pause after each one to ask if there's any questions on that or
If
keep
you
going.
could just go through them, because you might
Absolutely.
actually answer
Next
questions.
slide.
Yeah.
So the next one was recommendation number 3, which really had to do with our partnership with Chapin Hall to really take a look at a study around fiscal components within child welfare. So this involved a study with our staff filling out a survey to better understand how they were spending their time in the field with regards to placement, and to take that information back along with a fiscal analysis for opportunities for us to move this work forward. We were able to launch those surveys. We did not get a high of percentage that we would have liked to, despite initiatives. We were just under 50%. Chapin Hall has let us know that that is enough of a consensus of information for us to have a good analysis moving forward. So we have closed that survey. That analysis is underway, as well as meetings with our fiscal department within SSA, and we will have an analysis of all of that and some recommendations to be able to bring back in December. The next item I have to bring back for all of you has to do with our partnership with the Office of Supportive Housing, and really where we are in our partnership of building out the projects for our transition age youth. So you see in front of you, we're really excited. In 2024, we'll have the launch of multiple permanent sites for our transition-aged youth and continue to move forward all of those partnerships with no delays. The next one that I have for you really has to do with our, again, our partnership with Office of Supportive Housing and our partnerships with our community-based organizations that provide differential response. This was directly related to the fact that many of these families were seeing implications around housing, either being homeless or at risk of being homeless. So we partnered with OSH in order to make sure our community-based organizations serving in differential response really did understand both the tool that was used to assess families as well as how to access all of those services. We had that partnership and training in June and are actively tracking to make sure that we're partnering with our agencies to identify any families in risk of housing and connecting them with those resources. And then the final item that we brought back to you, I'm going to turn to Joanne to give that update.
Thank you so much. I know Supervisor Chavez remembers that Dr. Dewan was a co-chair of the Joint Foster Youth Task Force, and so I'm proud to bring back item number 27 on her behalf. The statement for item 27 is up there, that the county, school districts, and other agencies should align their contracts with providers to require common data collection and sharing compatible with Data Zone and Foster Vision. The work on recommendation number 27 is iterative and ongoing. Based on the original intent of the recommendation, we would say we have surpassed the alignment of common data and embarked on integrated data using technology across all organizations. This includes work with DFCS, JPD. Our 32 school districts are all in the data warehouse. All of our K-12 school districts traditional in the county are there. We're maintaining confidential data, and SCCOE continues to invest more than $750,000 annually into the data warehousing, integrated systems for data governance, and cybersecurity required to keep these resources safe and functioning. This collaboration requires a high level of support to support the hundreds of children and their families across our community. And we're really excited that it continues to move forward. The important thing that we want to really focus on as we move into the next iteration is to build out Foster Vision Plus so that school districts can also have information as to what other providers are working with the children and things like that, and bring in the education management program, that partnership with DFCS, so that that data is also, the essential pieces are evident to the school district. So we're really meeting that integrated data that it was intended to provide. Thank you.
And with that, we will take any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to first see if we have any public comments on this item.
We currently do not have any requests to speak.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing. I'm going to come back to the two of us. Do you want to start, or would you like me to? Okay, so first I just want to say, wow, I know this has been a labor of love, and please thank Dr. Dewan and her team for all their incredible work. Just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight, and actually, Greta, this a little bit more for you than others, and that is that I think at some point there may be value to maybe before we get into the budget season for next year, just having one kind of update on where we are with all of the plans relative to the task force, because two things we should be able to do. One is just kind of declare victory on those things that we've moved on from. And again, this started so long ago that a lot of issues have been addressed or resolved, or we're taking them still in pieces. And I would really love to get from the staff your best thinking about whether or not it makes sense for us to use a tool of an annual convening just focused on foster youth, which I know there are some that you're doing already, but one annual convening that allows all of our partners to do a report out on where we are in our reform movements. And this kind of goes back to the last issue, which is that there's so many moving parts that really understanding what we're doing effectively and ineffectively requires us, I think, kind of to double down and say, yes, here are all the emerging laws, here's how we're addressing them, here's how our partners are addressing them. I also think, frankly, one time we have to report all together at 1 year makes us all talk to each other at a level we couldn't imagine, because we all have to have the same PowerPoint. So I want to give you all an opportunity to think about that. I would like to see us look at something like that. The other is that on the one item relative to Chapin Hall's study, I think that there is absolutely going to be value that comes out of that study. The initial intent and what we were actually looking for was somebody who could work with the county to look at all the inputs we had for what I would describe as a relatively small group of young people. And this actually goes back to the point that, Sylvia, that you raised a moment ago. Like, I would really like us to say, if we know we have this many children and we know they become homeless and they get incarcerated and we know that, if we could take all the assets and the resources we're spending and better look at what the needs of the kids are, and even where we have financial, where the federal government is prescribing what we should do and the state's telling us what we should do, whether or not we can look at that pool of resources and find a better way and think about whether or not we want to fight for waivers or other things that would give us the opportunity to continue to do the kind of work we want to do with kids. What happened out of that is it became very confusing. The staff, I think, felt reluctant, and there were lots of reasons. It's complicated, it's hard, I get all of that. So I say that to you not to take us back to that. I think we should take a look at the Chapin study. I think we should do an annual convening. But at some point, we should learn enough at a local level from the people we serve, with so few people and such a massive bureaucracy around them, how to do this right and well. Like, how do we fundamentally change the number of children that really can safely stay with their parents, those that really can be with a guardian or a relative? And we have some ridiculous rules, like so hard to understand that you almost can't imagine that people become foster parents, stay foster parents, or adopt children that are extremely high need. And once they get adopted, we provide very little services to them. It's like so counterintuitive. So in any case, I'm willing to put that on the back burner, let you all think about that, but I think it is like, gosh, like the system, we all know there's way too many barriers, it's too painful, we've got this regulation and that regulation, but I really subscribe that if we were able to quantify this, it would give us a basis to have discussions with the federal and state government in a way we can't right now. And Chapin won't get us there. It's going to help, but it's not going to get us there. And so at some point, I think really the way I was thinking about it was using the model we're using for housing, honestly, to just say, okay, what are we spending? How effective are we being? And let's not be afraid of the answer, because I think it'll help us do a better job of really demanding changes at a state and federal level that we can't right now.
Oh, I super appreciate that. And I also just want to jump back to kind of the first part of what you were saying there about zooming out and kind of looking at the system as a whole. I think sometimes we'll end up talking in real detail about one slice of our system and kind of miss how that slice fits into the bigger infrastructure that supports kids who have lesser needs but may go down a really challenging path where we then end up in a position where we're really struggling to serve them, and what resources we're putting to kind of interrupt those patterns. What are some of the investments that we're making in family wellness before kids may end up coming to us at a really late stage of challenges and problems? What are the ways that we're making those investments? And I think to your point around also how are we making extraordinary investments sometimes and having pretty poor outcomes? And, you know, that's partly just the challenges associated with serving the most high need, high risk kids, which our systems do. But I do think there are a lot of emerging opportunities where some of the complexity is being heightened, but also some of it's decreasing. As, for example, as we were talking about, even with school link services, more services, particularly for mild to moderate, are becoming part of the suite of care that comes through Medi-Cal. And so there's sort of natural opportunities to have better insight into what we're doing and what we're spending to deliver care as more of it falls under that one funding stream. But I think it's a really unique opportunity that we have in a county resourced like Santa Clara County is, unlike a lot of other counties, and with a smaller population entering care, to be able to understand better and to reflect more what might be pain points that even in a well-resourced system we're experiencing that may just be structural barriers that we need to work with the state to remove, because if we can't figure out a way to solve some of these problems, it may be the case that they're just not solvable at the local level, and we need to level up to try and get some of these structures modified in ways that are more child-centric.
And I would really just encourage the staff to think about how to do that kind of broad assessment. I think it's really worth us doing. I'll just add one other point, you know, and I'm sure Sylvia will have a perspective on this as well, is that I think we have an extraordinarily talented group of people who work for the county. And we have extraordinary partnerships, and very rare. I will say the County Office of Education here is much stronger than in most places in the state, and that's true for a lot of our partnerships. So part of the reason I was so interested in the study is because I believe that all of our institutions are actually healthy enough to be introspective about the roles that we play and how rules taint the way we approach our jobs and the outcomes. So I won't hover on that too much longer, except to say that, again, I'd be interested in all of your perspective on, based on the work that you're doing now, based on where we are in our reform process, when it makes sense for us to take a deeper dive, and what's the most appropriate way to do it. The reason I was describing that particular model is only because I'm familiar with it, but there may be something else that we want to take a look at. I do think that, you know, honestly, we have some windows of opportunity at a state level that we may not have in the future around creating waiver opportunities. And I even worry about that at the federal government. To be honest with you, part of the reason I wanted the study is I hoped we would have it at the beginning of this presidential cycle, you know, because I thought we would have more of an opportunity. Found some wood. All right. On the housing issue, you know, one thing that I'm going to just request, and I think the lead agency on this is OSH, is that right? So one request I would make of Dan, of your team, I want to know how many kids need housing and how they're able to access it. So meaning when we're looking at foster children, we know we have kids who are current and former, and here's the other thing, we got to broaden the definition of a foster child, right? Like once they've been in the system, they're a foster kid. They're a kid that needs support and services. Doesn't mean we want to label them. It does mean we want to continue to add support for them. But I'm really interested in knowing how many young people that have touched the foster care system every year need housing, because we have options for housing. It doesn't have to be brand new housing, but I have a hard time understanding, given how much emphasis we're placing on rapid rehousing, on emergency housing, how we are still seeing an increase with foster youth in being homeless, even here. And so I want to quantify that, and I want to understand through this plan how those numbers are addressed in not just the housing that we're building from scratch, but preserved housing, shared housing. Because the other thing is, I will submit to you, I think we also try to give too many services to everybody. Like, I think we think, oh, you're a young person in need, you must need 4,000 services. Some kids need 2. Some kids want none. We have emerging housing available that's peer supported. It's the least expensive thing we can invest in, and we're starting to see success with it. If that kept kids, I don't, so anyway, so that part needs to be fleshed out, and I will make that as part of the motion, that we receive the report, that we ask staff to think a little bit about the appropriate way to do an analysis over our expenditures. But I'm going to leave that again to you, because I think you, Dan, you're kind of new in your new role, and so I want to see what you think. And then on the housing, we have got to be able to quantify how many kids need it, all the different ways we're trying to get it, because we should get that foster care number to 0. Those are our kids. Like, there's just no way we should have a single child, young person, leaving any kind of care and landing on the street in this county. Like, rarely, and I'm speechless, but there you go. So I'd like those numbers. And that'll be part of my motion. Can you second my motion? Unless you made one already and I forgot.
I did. Secretly. No, I'll second your motion.
All right. Did you want to add something?
Well, one, I wanted to make sure I had clarity on what exactly you're wanting us to bring back on that. But so let me maybe I can take a stab at it, which is you're wanting us to provide you with what information we have on the number of young people leaving the foster care system who then end up shortly thereafter experiencing homelessness, and what is the set of resources we have at our disposal currently?
No, the total number of kids who are in our system, because that's kind of the first pass, right? Like, if we have 600 kids a year, what is the average number right now? It's lower. I know it was 600 for a while, but
Yeah, it's right around 600 in care, in foster care.
so we have 600 children that are in our care. We know that we need to keep an eye on those 600 kids. So I guess I'm looking a little upstream too. Greta, so I'm so glad you asked the question, because what we want to take a look at is the housing status of every child who's in our custodial care, and making sure that we have plans for them for their housing. Like, if they're in our care, we should make sure they're housed, where they're housed, and then, to your point, how many young people or how many of our former foster youth are unhoused. And I think we should, stop at the 26, from 16 to 26, 15 to 26. So then we know how many young people are slipping through the cracks in our community. And I know that last number is hard to know, but I do want us to be tracking that, because we absolutely know where we find them eventually, right? In the county jail or the state jail or on the street. So I'm really wanting just to understand what's the service we have to provide, because I think it would help us right-size the housing approaches we're taking. That's really the intent.
Understood. So goal is to just make sure that we understand what data we can use to predict future needs if we're trying to meet 100% of what might be transitional housing resources for youth leaving, let's say, a resource parent home and needing to live independently. What are we doing for those youth? How many are we going to need to serve, and are we prepared to do so?
Right, and by the way, I think, I don't want to, your point, is it transitional housing, permanent housing? I don't have that. I don't know the answer to that. But I think we ought to have options for young people that need it. Some won't need it, and that's okay. Like, the ones that are on their own and doing great, that's great.
And in terms of the work product that we'll be bringing back, we will provide you, if I'm understanding the request correctly with an off-agenda report with the information we have on that yet, and then we can hear from you if there's more information you need.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ask just a couple of follow-up questions, and I really appreciate you asking to clarify how many of our kids actually are unhoused, because I think it was about last week. I'm kidding. It's so post-pandemic, I just don't know when weeks end, but within the last week and a half, I went to a doctor's appointment, and my doctor was telling me how she was going to cover dinner for one of a sports team at one of our local high schools in the East Side Union High School District. I don't want to mention any particular schools. And she said because the team has a handful of our youth that are unhoused. And so the team mom gets together and coordinates with the rest of, whoever has, is able to provide with a level of contribution, and then she'll have some dinners ahead of the game and during practice so that they make sure that they are well fed, right? That they're ready to take on the task of the sport. And so she was going to contribute to that, and I said, well, I'll sign me up. I'll do that as well. Who do I get a hold of and all that, and it just it made me think about how many of our children do we not know about, right? That are just going to our high schools or junior high, and if you all remember, that was such an awkward phase. I mean, just it's hard alone just to control your hormones and all the dynamics that are happening on campus, and then to have this additional stressor. And it's not their responsibility to let us know. It's our responsibility to know. So I really appreciate you asking for that data. And one of the questions I had was under recommendation 27, when it says, for the county and the school districts and other agencies to align their contracts with providers to require common data collection and sharing compatible with the data zone and foster vision. And then through the foster vision, I think there was an increase, recognized 200 to 300 youth, although I'm not sure why we wouldn't have an exact number, but be it as it may, there wasn't anything for the data zone, only for the foster vision, and I'm wondering why.
Foster Vision is our county shared database. Data Zone is not a shared database. It is specifically funded by the school district that chooses to engage in the analytics.
Okay, so
You want to come up?
That's kind of right.
May I introduce our Director of Integrated Data Systems? Because he can answer that question better than I, because he said I'm only kind of right.
I heard that, so get on up here. What's going on?
All right. Are we on? There we go. Thank you. So I'm Nabil Shaheen. I'm the Director of Integrated Data Research and Evaluation. And so I work with Joanne on the foster vision system as well as Data Zone. So Data Zone's divided into two different things. It is our student data warehouse, so that holds the data that feeds to the foster vision system, and that's the data for every district in Santa Clara County. So all of our TK through 12th grade students in our public non-charter districts. And then Data Zone also gets referred to as the analytics platform. So we have some districts that also pay for us to serve them analytics for their district. The data warehouse portion of it is completely funded by SCCOE, so that work is subsidized completely by SCCOE. If districts then want the data analytics platform, then they pay an additional fee on top of that. And we structure it that way to ensure that we always have a stable and complete data set coming from the districts, so rather than putting that burden on our districts, we take that burden on at the county level to ensure we have that to serve our integrated data systems.
So Data Zone informs foster vision.
Exactly. So every night, what happens is we take the information we get from DFCS and from JPD for the students that are currently in their care or being served by them. And we match that against the data warehouse in order to provide all of the educational data. So the enrollment, behavior history, attendance data, transcript, and credit data. So it matches that every night and then gives us basically a new look at it every single day.
So the systems are, since they're already talking, it shouldn't be very difficult to acquire what Supervisor Chavez was requesting, is to recognize the number of unhoused children and youth in our system.
So from within that system, we're pulling from the student information systems for the districts. So yes, so long as a district is providing or reporting that data into their student information system accurately, then yes, we would have that data for a student that would be considered to be McKinney-Vento through the school district. Yep. And so, but what we would have to make sure we do before we share that data out is we have very strict data sharing with our districts, is we would need to make sure that the districts agree for us to provide that data out, right? Because when we look at the data warehouse, one of our big agreements with the districts in order to get this work lifted up is that the districts continue to own the data. SCCOE does not own this data.
So what obligation do the school districts have in inputting some of the information that is relevant to us? For example, the unhoused students.
What the districts tend to input into their student information system, the accountability piece, is actually determined by CDE and what is required within the accountability systems at the state level for CDE and CalPADS.
So is unhoused population part of that?
And if I could also clarify too, because there's a couple different populations, I think, here. A DFCS traditional, like a foster youth that's under 18, we wouldn't have a dependent youth or somebody under our care jurisdiction that would be a homeless youth. We have youth that potentially go leave their foster placement or leave their treatment facility, and we may not know where they're at, but they wouldn't necessarily be a homeless youth. Because they have a placement identified, they're not at that placement. Sure. I think it sounded like from Chairperson Chavez, that population of unhoused foster youth, or really any youth that at some point touched the DFCS system, and then the DFCS component closed, and this individual has moved on to kind of early adulthood, and now they're unhoused, and previously had been a foster youth, but not necessarily a current foster youth who is also homeless. So I think those are potentially a little two different populations. So I think the report that we're going to be looking at is going to be youth that were previously in DFCS care, have exited our care and are in kind of early adulthood, 18 to 26 or 27, and are now experiencing an unhoused situation.
Well, actually, one point, I think the point you're hitting on that's sort of brilliant is that one difference now is that schools are reporting. They're more inclined to report homelessness and try to seek it out because they get additional funding from the state to serve that child. So you raise an excellent point, which is what's the process by which we can get aggregate data so we actually understand what that trend looks like? Because right now, unfortunately, the way we're gathering data, well, let me just say, what you're pointing out is actually an even more it's sort of a broader issue, which is that we use a bunch of different data systems to determine how many children are homeless. And one of them is our time and count, point in time count. I always say that backwards. Our point in time count. But another really great resource would be to know this, because schools are reporting more. And what's interesting about the point you raised, it's really something we should be thinking about, is that we've been really wrestling with how to do the early intervention for families, and what I hadn't thought about until just now is that that data, that McKinney-Vento data, is one that would really be helpful to us to be able to address that. And the other is that if, with all the services we're providing, schooling services, for anybody who ends up on that risk list, having a much better way of frankly, if you, thinking about how to incentivize the schools to help us with that information, but actually to get to the family, that's very powerful.
Yes. No, exactly, because I called a friend, because you call your friends to help you out, figure out how do we get this information? How do our systems talk to one another in order to provide the services that those families need, right? I mean, that's a really intimate detail of that student, but yet I don't know who's capturing it, and then who's responsible, right? Who's responsible in providing support? Well, they didn't ask, and I really don't think that's the point, right? I think that if we know it, then it's our responsibility to provide the services, and I know that, McKinney-Vento is part of that framework in terms of identifying and having the children, self-identify if they are unhoused. But I know that our teachers recognize who our unhoused children are. They know who's going through a really difficult time. And so it really makes me think about what are we really aligning here in terms of a common data collection that could help improve, like you said, Supervisor Chavez, with how do we connect everything that we're doing and collecting the information that we're collecting, how is that informing everything that we're doing? Because and not have it a patchwork, but a real comprehensive picture of who our children are, right? And so I thought it was really neat that you have all the school districts on board, right? This is a real.
Forever. It took them a long time.
Yeah, I saw that it was 2018
Thank you. It took
that
a
you
lot
all
of time.
started.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
I saw that 2018. I was like, wow, that in 2018, that's great. That's wonderful. I mean, I think this is a lot of really great work. And so what do we do with the information that you initially were interested in collecting for, whatever that original intent was, and use it for the purposes that we now have, which is we're recognizing that our children and our youth are in real need of a lot of different services, yet our schools are not the hubs that people think that they are and that our families think that they are. They just are not. They're very limited. And how do we maximize what our schools are recognizing and understanding, and in order to better support our children so that they don't end up where you said, Oliver, eventually in those systems that you mentioned, which is what we all want to prevent. I know we all want to prevent that, and so I'm really hoping that we can make these systems talk to us in a way that is really helpful, right? I had a question about that, and darn it. Well, I lost it. But I think more importantly, I think we're on to recognizing how all of these things connect and create and inform us. And then it's our responsibility and the responsibility of everybody here who's sitting on the dais and right of me to recognize these trends and then have your systems pivot. Because if your systems don't pivot, there's no point in them collecting the data and from 2018 having you all coordinate all of the work that you're doing so that we can say, yay, checked off, great work, and then what? And so anyways, I really love this this direction. I think that I think we're exploring here, and I see you are so ready to do a motion.
Oh, actually, I was gonna
that
do a little
that I'm loving. I was just loving the energy that was coming from you. So I just think that this is really great. Darn it, I forgot my question, but I'm gonna skip and then
Come back to me. So, and I want to just say to everybody, I apologize from a time perspective. We should be ending at 4:30, and we have a lot of stuff on the agenda. So I'm going to do a little agenda organizing just to keep us moving. But what we'd like to do is we'll move item 6. I think we've done that already. To accept both A and B, but on B, which is the 6-month report, I'm open to us doing something annually if we feel like that is a way to just keep the momentum going. So I'm going to move A and B with a request that there be an off agenda on how to handle B to maybe go to a year so that, again, we can keep people moving. And then as I'll just add the C, which is this assessment of foster youth in need of housing, recognizing that it's a very complex request, but really trying to understand that subpopulation and how we get there. And then finally, what I would also request is that I know that our staffs are already talking, like you all are already talking about McKinney-Vento and how many kids we have. I would like to recommend that for a 4th step, that we make sure that there is at least a discussion between the Office of Supportive Housing and the work that you're doing, just again, because I think it might help them on the prevention side of some programming the Board of Supervisors has asked them to do. And that would be a motion.
Second. And I would like to add to that motion so we can, under recommendation 27, include within that required common data that is being collected for that to include whatever unhoused indicators or questions that are appropriate for future alignment of the contracts. And I don't know if we can actually do that mid-contract. I don't.
So may I ask for that? Could we do that in an off agenda? Because I think those are really good questions about how to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think what you're raising, what support do you need to be able to acquire data and get it? And frankly, I know this is probably giving some of you a little bit of post-traumatic stress experience, given the challenges you've already had. So on that item, if they can come back off agenda, maybe make some recommendations because I think one other point I just want to add is that it's possible for us to do that. I think Supervisor Arenas and other board members would love to help as it relates to other institutions that we need to engage.
And Chairperson Chavez, I think we could, I think it'd be appropriate in this committee to get some information on that and then bring it to the board if there were ultimately recommendations.
Absolutely. And I recognize that any of these items, which is why any of these items have to go to the full board for final action. It is why I know, Greta, as you and James are leading our organization, that really doing a better job of what is a request for information versus what requires a board action, and how board action recommendations come from these committees in the clearest, cleanest way so that people don't get frustrated with each other. But I know that's on their to-do list. So I know that list is a mile high right now. All right, so we have a motion and a second. May I request a vote?
Vice Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
And Chairperson Chavez?
Yes. All right, so meeting management, and I apologize I wasn't managing us earlier. I'm going to say a very sincere apology to Rafaela, who I see in the back, who's been patiently here, and I'm going to assume that's Natalia sitting next to you, yes? And apologize profusely to you and also to Sarah, because frankly, this committee should be focused on your work plan. So what I want to do is, when we do our next meeting, I will ask the clerk if we can begin with you, Sarah, and then go right over to intern and earn, and then everybody else will be moved around. And then we're going to take CEDA now, and if it's okay, so I'll be asking for us to defer 7 and 8 to the next meeting. May I have a motion to do that?
Motion to defer 7 and 8.
A second. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak on that?
Not for items 7 and 8.
Okay, so we're going to close the public hearing on that and ask for a vote.
Okay. Vice Chairperson Arenas
Yes.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Yes. And then, colleagues, I know we have reports from all of you that we'll get right to. We'll do CEDA, you, and then we'll adjourn. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Chavez and Supervisor Arenas. Rocio Luna, Deputy County Executive. With me today is Julie Ramirez, who will give us just a couple sound bites from today's report, and then we'll be open to questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. You have before you an update related to CEDA. Our overarching goal is to create a standardized process for conducting gender-based analysis for county programs and operations, and we'll get there by working with a consultant to develop a county-wide gender equity action plan. We're currently, though, at the very beginning of the stages. We are in the market research phase. We're working with our representatives from our Commission on the Status of Women in this phase. And in fact, they've shared great resources with staff to make tremendous strides. We hope to wrap that up this week. You can see the rest of some highlights from the rest of the plan in the ledge file. So we're here to answer any questions related to next steps and what you can expect.
Thank you so very much. I'm going to go to public comment, and both online and here, and then we'll go to the board discussion.
All right. We do have one person in chambers, but no hands on Zoom. So we'll start with the one in chambers.
Welcome.
Right. Our speaker is Lisa Little, I believe.
To speak, and thank you, Julie and Rocio. We really appreciate, as I speak, Lisa Liddell with the Commission on the Status of Women. We're happy to be involved in the process of CEDA and the implementation just kicking off. However, I feel like we haven't made much progress yet, and I'm hoping that we can have better communications because we've really only met with Sochi twice, and it was in the course of like 8 to 10 days, and we've got this spreadsheet, but it feels really top level, like we haven't gotten the market research, and I don't know if maybe the Office of Women's Policy has more information that they just haven't shared. But I just wanted to put that out there, that we've really just got an initial set of candidates. And I know, so what Julie said was we're at the initial phase, so maybe we're not ready to, in October, go to the RFI, but I know we've been approved since April, so I'm a little concerned about the timeline and just about our frequency of communication and the level of depth that I know that my two other colleagues on this task to work together would like to see a lot more collaboration, and we're hoping for that. I also wanted to express an interest in looking at the universal basic income pilots that are out in the county. I understand there are 3 different ones going, and to consider what's going on with, CEDA task force 2 years ago came up with recommendations, and they kind of apply to what we would be doing with a gender consultant. So I'd like to find out if there's been any visibility in that area, or looking at the UBI and how that could help with housing and different areas of economic security. We are at CSW doing a housing pilot right now, an ad hoc, where we're looking very closely at how it applies to CEDA and what we can do as commissioners, and maybe even having a public hearing that we'll be talking more with Julie about. But I'm concerned there are things like protected class, where for housing anyway, protected class is just, not just, but it includes seniors, disabled, and domestic violence survivors. And I'm just hoping that that doesn't become an issue for us as we look at women and really try to focus on women throughout all of the CEDA areas, because housing is one of the 6 big areas. So really, in a nutshell, I kind of threw that out there. I know that was a side comment, but the UBI, I think, is more and more something that we can look at as a county and how it applies to helping women. So thank you very much.
Thank you. First, I just wanted to see from Rocio and Julie, or Dr. Luna, do you all want to respond on the communication just approach?
Sure, definitely we can do better, but it's been a challenge to identify even a short list of potential candidates because CEDA has not been done. It's been done sort of in different places, San Francisco, San Diego. We're looking to them for best practices, but it's a challenging find, as you know, finding quality consultants in this particular sphere. has been a challenge, and it will take a little time to get there. We want to be able to identify the right consultant for this work. It's really critical to getting the organizational frame right, particularly as you noted in the report. Doing this in a governmental entity is unique, and we want to find the right consultant. So getting that small list of potential consultants and then doing the RFI is really critical to this work. And it just takes a while, as you know, in our organization to get that process right.
So just a couple of thoughts that I have. Can you remind me, I should know this, who's the liaison from the board to the commission? Please don't say it's me and I didn't know. That would be horrible. Do you know? Do we have because I know that we have some liaison roles with some of the commissions. Do we have one for the
I think
commissions?
it's primarily through the clerk of the board, and then the Office of Women's Policy provides the programmatic liaison.
I'm actually meant if we had a board member. Oh. But I don't know the answer to that. So let me just let me make a recommendation. One is that I want to just say, in a number of areas, and I'll say this to you, Lisa, we have had, for gender-based studies of the jail, we had a really, really hard time finding someone. This wasn't our process that was a problem. It was literally finding people who were experts in that area. For the hate crimes task force, I wanted to find a specialist who'd done work relative to the determination around whether or not the attacks on women could be considered a hate crime, and why were some places able to do that and not others. We found somebody, the expert we found, in the UK. So one request I would make is that it may make sense to actually talk to the UN, because they, my guess is, have consultants that have been helping them and researchers that have been helping them in different parts of the world. And I would just say out loud that it may be that we don't find somebody here in California, that we really are looking for somebody from another place, because where I will say I think there are countries that are ahead of us in this effort, frankly, pretty dramatically ahead, and it would be worth taking a look there for support. So that would be one recommendation. The second is, as it relates to communication, I have to say that all along there's been a lot of tension between the task force, I think the Office of Women's Policy, the Office of by the way, when I say tension, I don't mean that out of a mean-spiritedness. I genuinely think this is really important, and all of us are looking at this from very unique perspectives, and it's making it, it's just, the tension may actually be natural in some respects in terms of how we get moving. What I would like to recommend is that as you are moving forward on this, that perhaps as chair of this committee, I could go with you to the commission and have a conversation with them and build those conversations in until we get this moving. Because I want people to understand that I have the utmost confidence in all of you that you're doing what needs to be done and that we need to move in a direction. I have a lot of confidence and excitement with the commission, and somehow we got to get everybody on the same page, not in agreement about how we're going to proceed, but that in fact we are proceeding. So let's work on that. We can work on that through my office. Okay, do you have anything else you want to add? All right, so with that, I'm going to say thank you to the staff. Let me just look for a moment if this is something that we need to, we'll receive the report, and if we could get, I'll move to both receive the report, to look at requests that we look internationally for probably you're already doing that, but to keep doing it. And maybe even to both San Francisco and to San Diego, because one thing that has occurred to me is that I can't remember if it was in San Francisco. I'm sorry, I'll state the motion again, but that I do know there was, the way we got the consultant that's assisting us in the jails was through a contact through the Office of Women's Policy there in San Francisco. Like, I think that's who gave us their name. And then we tried to get a few other people to apply. So our motion is to receive the report, for me to spend a little time with the Office of Women's Policy at the Commission on Status of Women, doing an update with them, and to encourage our staff to look globally, because I think that's what we're going to need to do, and that will be my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Vice Chairperson Arenas
Yes.
and Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go to verbal reports, and we're going to start with SSA.
Hi, good afternoon. Just wanted to start with some updates on the possibility of the government shutdown and some of the impacts potentially on SSA. Medicare, Social Security, and veteran medical care, we're not expecting any impact if there were to be a shutdown. For CalWorks and CalFresh, we have sufficient funding through the end of October. If the shutdown extended beyond that, the state does have some flexibility and are working with their federal partners to get additional guidance should that be needed. On the child welfare side, the majority of the child welfare federal funding goes through Title 4E. There are appropriations for that in place through the end of the year, so that would be in place through December 31st with no impact. And Medi-Cal is similar. There's sufficient funding for the next 3 months, so we're really have very little impact for that program. The DFCS and Juvenile Probation Comprehensive Prevention Plan was finally approved by the state. So that's been a lot of work. Expect an off agenda coming that's going to summarize that piece of work. Kind of hot off the press, we saw that the White House released new regulations specifically for child welfare today. So we're going to get more guidance on these, but in summary, there's 3 of them. One of them is going to allow states to simplify the process for kinship caregivers to become foster care providers, which is really good. One of them was an executive order directing HHS to protect LGBTQI plus youth in foster care. And the final one is HHS is releasing a proposed rule that could expand access to legal services for families. This is something that our county was a little bit ahead of that in our first call for families, but I think it is exciting now to see this as a national movement. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I just have one item to update the committee on. Some good news related to funding. Finally, a little bit of good news. The California Department of Child Support Services has recently instituted the ability for local county child support agencies to carry over unspent funding from year to year, only up to a certain limit. Up until this point, DCSS has not had the ability to carry over any unspent funding at the end of the fiscal year. And so we were in a use it or lose it type of scenario, which made it difficult for planning purposes. Beginning with the end of this past fiscal year, the state is allowing our office and all county DCSS offices to carry over unspent funding up to 3% of our allocation. It equates to about $900,000 in terms of a total cap. The funding can be used during the course of any upcoming fiscal year to help offset any budget deficits or for any targeted special projects. Specifically, we plan on using the funding to help offset the cost of annual cost increases, including negotiated labor increases. DCSS absorbs our annual cost increases within our flat state funding allocation. So we normally do this by holding positions vacant and then using salary savings to offset those increased costs. We end up deleting most of our vacancies on an ongoing basis to make up for that. So this change is going to allow us some funding flexibility, which we haven't had. We hope that it will allow us to better manage our annual budget challenges, maintain service levels, and engage in some multi-year planning, which we haven't been able to do because of the use it or lose it scenario when it comes to funding. Additionally, the state is hoping that this will incentivize all county DCSS offices across the state to work more efficiently on an ongoing basis. So finally, some good news related to funding, a little more flexibility, which we haven't had. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. I think, Marisol, we're going to go to you.
Hi, Mariel Caballero, Deputy Director of Probation Administration. That's okay. You saw my mom recently. Probation is excited to announce that we're going to be releasing our upcoming, or actually our 2022 annual report. It's our data book, which is a streamlined version of our annual report that we moved to during COVID. We'll be bringing that to both CSSE and public safety in the future. I think you're going to, some of the changes that we've included are appendixes specifically related to girls in the system, specifically related to the city of San Jose as a whole, as opposed to just the top 5 zip codes, and also to South County, both Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, and then also South County as a whole. So we'll be bringing that forward in the next month or so. And then also wanted to highlight that the Neighborhood Safety Unit will be working with both Gilroy and East San Jose on upcoming Dia de los Muertos Harvest Festival events at Valley Palms and Gilroy, and we also supported a variety of back-to-school events across Gilroy and East San Jose, and we're excited to report that our FY23 or FY24 contracts are up and running at a variety of locations, which increase school-based services at Mount Madonna, fellowship programming through Fresh Lifelines for Youth and New Hope for Youth, as well as gang intervention programs in our 2 communities. So with that, that's all I have.
Thank you. Sarah?
Okay, thank you. Sarah Duffy, Chief Children's Officer. I'm going to just give an update on our childcare infrastructure grants because that is what we've been spending most of our time on. So Valley Health Foundation released a pre-eligibility form earlier this month, and as of yesterday, we have 410 applications that we've received. A lot. So the outreach has been phenomenally successful. We have a few stats. 276 of those were from family child care homes that were submitted in English. And we had another 57 family child care home providers submit them in Spanish. And then we have 80 centers that submitted forms. So we have been very successful in outreach. We have some informational sessions that are coming up this week. We had one last Saturday at Blanca Alvarado, and 73 providers showed up to that. So a huge success for a Saturday. We have one in Gilroy this Saturday. I think at 10:30 at the library there, and then we have 2 online sessions, one for providers, family child care home providers, on the 4th of October, that's at 6 p.m., and one for center providers on the 6th. And we are working to put together a session for Mandarin-speaking providers as well. That's been requested by the community. So we are on track to have a very busy fall reviewing applications.
That's incredible.
Stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you very much for participating today, and we appreciate the work you do, and keep it up. And we will see you at our next meeting on Monday, October 23rd. And Sarah, you will be first. I apologize. Thank you. We are adjourned.